The church bells rang out, their echoes resounding across the quiet streets, marking the start of what was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. Maria's breath caught in her throat as she stood at the back of the grand cathedral, the floor beneath her feet cool, smooth marble, the walls towering high above her. It felt surreal, as if she were watching someone else, someone far more fortunate, walk down the aisle. But no, this was real. This was her moment. She looked to her father, whose face was a picture of pride, mixed with a subtle hint of anxiety. His arm, strong and reassuring, held hers firmly. He smiled at her, but she could see the nervousness in his eyes, as if he, too, could sense something was wrong. Yet, she dismissed the feeling. Nothing could ruin this day. Nothing could ruin the love they shared. Jared had promised. He had promised that he would be there, waiting for her at the altar, ready to take the next step in their life together. They had planned this day for months. From the venue to the flowers, every detail was thought out and coordinated down to the smallest thread of the lace on her gown. She had been dreaming of this moment for as long as she could remember, the man she loved standing there waiting for her. This was their fairy tale, their happy ending. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her nerves. The music swelled as the first notes of her wedding march began to play. With every step, her heart raced, the room seeming to grow larger as she walked forward. The guests turned to look at her, some with smiles, others with glistening eyes, but there was something off in the air, something she couldn't quite place. She was so focused on the altar, where Jared was supposed to be, that she didn't even notice the stares, the awkward glances exchanged among the guests. It wasn't until she reached the front and looked up that the full weight of the moment hit her. Jared wasn't there. Her eyes searched frantically, desperately scanning the crowd of familiar faces. She took another step forward, her heels clicking louder against the floor, the sound reverberating through the cathedral, each echo growing more suffocating. But no matter how much she searched, he wasn't there. The altar stood empty, the pristine white flowers in front of it untouched. The groom's seat was vacant, and the priest, waiting patiently at the pulpit, looked down at his watch as if wondering where Jared had gone. Maria's heart skipped a beat. A cold wave of panic swept over her. Was he running late? Was he stuck in traffic? No, this was too important, too planned. He was supposed to be here. It was his wedding day too. He would never leave her standing alone. She felt her father's grip tighten on her arm, but it barely registered. Her mind was elsewhere, racing. The whispers from the guests around her began to fill the air like a swarm of bees. She barely heard them, though, her focus fixated on the empty space at the altar. Where is he? She thought, her pulse beginning to race. Where is my groom? Minutes passed, and with each tick of the clock, her anxiety grew. She held herself together, outwardly calm, but inside, panic began to tear at her, the knots of doubt slowly unraveling her sanity. What if something had happened to him? What if he was in danger? She told herself to stay calm, to breathe, but her breath became shallower by the second. Then, just as the thought crossed her mind, maybe he's hurt, maybe something's gone wrong, she saw movement in the side aisle. A woman. At first, Maria didn't recognize her. She was dressed in an elegant, yet understated black dress. Her long, dark hair flowed down her back in soft waves, and she moved with a quiet confidence that seemed oddly out of place in such a setting. The woman walked calmly toward the altar, her eyes downcast, her steps measured. Maria's gaze followed her, slowly narrowing in on the woman's face. And then, everything stopped. It was her. The woman who had been the source of countless whispers, the woman Maria had always been told to ignore, to dismiss as nothing more than a passing distraction. But here she was, walking into Maria's wedding, the woman who had been at the center of all of Maria's doubts, fears, and frustrations. The one person she never thought she'd actually see in person. The mistress. Her blood ran cold. There was no doubt now. The recognition hit like a punch to the gut, stealing her breath. The woman's gaze met Maria's, and in that fleeting moment, the unspoken truth was clear. This woman had been a part of her life for far longer than she had ever known. The mistress wasn't just a rumor or a half-hearted whisper among friends. She was real. She was here. And Jared, her fiancé, the man who had sworn to marry her, to spend his life with her, had left her. He had chosen this woman over her. Maria's heart felt like it had been ripped from her chest. Her legs wobbled, and for a moment, she thought she might collapse right there in front of everyone. But she couldn't. She had to hold it together. She was the bride. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and now, in an instant, it had turned into the worst day of her existence. Her father, sensing the shift in her, leaned in. "Maria?" His voice was barely above a whisper, full of confusion and concern. "Maria, what's happening? What's going on?" But Maria didn't have the strength to answer. She was too overwhelmed by the surreal scene unfolding in front of her. She glanced at the guests, their faces now filled with discomfort and curiosity. Some exchanged glances, whispering behind their hands, while others simply stared, too stunned to speak. The mistress stood at the altar now, her back to Maria, as if claiming her territory, as if she had every right to be there. The priest looked at her, then back at Maria, clearly unsure of what to do. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating. Maria could barely keep it together as she slowly turned her gaze back to the empty altar. Jared was still nowhere to be seen. The reality of the situation crashed over her like a tidal wave. She was standing here, dressed in a white gown, surrounded by people who had come to celebrate her wedding, but the man who had promised to be her husband was gone. He had left her, at the altar, in front of everyone. The seconds felt like hours. Her world began to blur, the edges of her vision darkening. The ache in her chest grew unbearable. She had loved him. She had trusted him. And he had betrayed her. In the cruelest way possible. The mistress took a step forward, her expression unreadable, her eyes never leaving Maria. For a moment, it felt like time had frozen, and the entire world was watching the unspoken confrontation between the two women. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. Then, without a word, the mistress turned away and made her way toward the exit. But as she reached the doors, she glanced back at Maria, offering a faint, almost mocking smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something Maria didn't, something she had been blind to for so long. And in that moment, Maria knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that her life was about to change forever. The questions swirled in her mind. Why had Jared left her? Why had he chosen this woman? Was their love even real? What had happened in the years they had been together that had led to this moment of betrayal? But more than that, what would she do now? How would she move forward? The guests began to murmur, their discomfort now turning to concern. Maria stood there, still frozen in place, staring at the empty altar, the unanswered questions consuming her. The priest cleared his throat, but no one seemed to know what to do next. And as the silence stretched on, Maria realized that the answers she was searching for would not come easily. This was just the beginning of a journey, one that would take her to places she never expected, and lead to discoveries she never could have imagined. Maria stood at the altar, her heart pounding, her world falling apart around her. The weight of the moment seemed to press down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. The church had once been a place of solace, of joy. Now, it felt like a prison, a place that held her trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Jared had promised. He had promised her everything. And yet, here she was, alone, humiliated, and abandoned. The words, "I can't believe it," echoed in her mind over and over, but they felt hollow, like a mantra she couldn't escape. She had always trusted him, always believed in their love. She had thought that their bond was unbreakable, stronger than anything. And now, she stood there, her wedding day stolen from her, with nothing but the crushing weight of betrayal. Her father's gentle hand rested on her arm, but it brought little comfort. His presence was a reminder of the disappointment and disbelief that radiated from everyone around her. He had been the one to walk her down the aisle, and now, he was the one who couldn't look her in the eye, as if afraid that by doing so, he would somehow become a part of the wreckage that had once been her future. The crowd began to stir, the uncomfortable tension thick in the air. Guests whispered to one another, their eyes darting nervously between Maria and the empty altar. It was clear they had no idea what was happening, just as Maria had no idea. She felt like an exhibit in a strange, twisted display, and she hated it. "Maria," her father said softly, but there was no warmth in his voice anymore, just a note of uncertainty. "Let's go. Let's get out of here." But Maria couldn't. She couldn't leave, not yet. Not until she knew the truth. Not until she understood why this had happened. She turned slowly, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The sound seemed to echo through the church, drowning out everything else. She faced the empty pews, the faces of family and friends now frozen in discomfort, unsure of how to react. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and they lingered on one face in particular. The mistress. She had almost forgotten about her, but now she couldn't get the woman out of her mind. She was still there, lingering at the back of the room, her cold, calculating eyes fixed on Maria. It wasn't just that she had been the reason for the chaos in Maria's life, it was the way she held herself, the way she seemed so confident in her place in this world. As if she belonged here, in the church, in the life that Maria had built with Jared. The woman's expression was unreadable, a mix of triumph and indifference. Maria's eyes narrowed. She had to confront her. She had to know the truth. The crowd parted as she made her way toward the back of the church, each step feeling heavier than the last. The closer she got to the woman, the more her pulse quickened. She was shaking now, her emotions boiling over, anger, hurt, confusion, and betrayal all swirling inside her. When Maria finally reached the woman, their eyes met again. This time, there was no surprise, no recognition. Just a cold, quiet acknowledgement. It was almost as if the mistress had been waiting for this moment, just as much as Maria had been. Why? Maria's voice trembled, but she didn't care. She had to know. She had to ask the question that had been burning inside her ever since she walked down the aisle and saw the empty altar. Why did you do this? Why did he leave me? The mistress took a step closer, her gaze unwavering. For a moment, Maria thought the woman might say something, offer some explanation, but all she did was smile. It wasn't a comforting smile. It wasn't a sympathetic one. It was a smile of someone who had already won. "I didn't do anything," the mistress replied softly, almost too softly for anyone else to hear. "Jared made his choices. And, if I'm being honest, Maria, I wasn't the one who was going to be left standing here today." Maria's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of the words. Was the mistress admitting something? Or was she playing some cruel game, taunting her? "You," Maria started, her voice shaking. "You're telling me that you didn't." The mistress shook her head slowly, her lips curling into a smile that seemed more like a sneer. "I'm not the one who left you standing at the altar. That was all Jared. And don't kid yourself into thinking he didn't have a choice. He made it." With those words, the ground beneath Maria's feet seemed to tilt, her vision blurring. This wasn't the answer she had wanted. She had thought, hoped, even, that the mistress would be the one who would finally give her the closure she needed. But all she had done was throw more fuel on the fire of confusion. The mistress's eyes darkened, and she took a step back, turning toward the door. "Look," she said without looking back. "You'll figure it out eventually. Maybe you already have. But right now, you need to go. You don't belong here anymore." And with that, the woman turned and walked out of the church, leaving Maria standing there, stunned and silent. The walk back to her car felt like a blur. Maria didn't even know how she managed to make it through the rest of the day, through the questioning glances of family and friends, the murmurs of gossip, the whispers that followed her like a dark cloud. She had barely managed to say a word to anyone, her mind lost in a haze of disbelief and heartbreak. Her father had driven her home, but even he had said little, his face drawn and weary, as if he, too, had been crushed by the weight of what had happened. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind whirling with unanswered questions. How could he have done this? How could Jared, her Jared, have left her like this, in front of everyone, on the most important day of their lives? But the more she thought about it, the more her mind began to wander back to the mistress's words. Jared had made a choice. He had made his choice. And, somehow, that was the most painful part of it all. She hadn't just been abandoned by a man who didn't care. She had been abandoned by someone who had chosen someone else. For the first time since that horrible moment in the church, Maria allowed herself to truly process the situation. She thought about the years they had spent together, the quiet moments, the shared dreams, the promises they had made to each other. And she realized that something had been off all along. She hadn't wanted to believe it, but deep down, she had always known that their relationship was fragile. Jared had changed. And now, it seemed, he had changed in ways she couldn't even begin to understand. As the days passed, the shock began to wear off, replaced by a deep, gnawing sense of betrayal. The kind of betrayal that consumed her, that kept her up at night, that made her question everything about her life. She needed answers. She needed to know why. And there was only one person who could give her the truth. Maria's mind had become a battleground, a war zone of thoughts and emotions she couldn't seem to control. The weeks following the disaster at the altar were an unrelenting blur of confusion, pain, and anger. She barely remembered the days that passed between the wedding day and now. What was once a happy, bustling apartment filled with memories of love and shared dreams had now become a cold, desolate space. The walls, once comforting, now felt like they were closing in on her. The silence was suffocating. Every time she closed her eyes, she could see Jared's face, his eyes filled with promises of forever. She could hear his voice, soft and loving, telling her that they would always be together. But those words had been hollow, nothing more than empty promises, broken in the cruelest possible way. And the worst part? Maria couldn't figure out why. She didn't know what had happened, what had gone wrong. He had simply disappeared, abandoned her for someone else without so much as a warning. The silence in the apartment was deafening. It had been nearly 2 weeks since that fateful day, and the pain was still raw. The day after the wedding, Maria had tried to reach Jared. She called him, texted him, even emailed. But there had been no response. He was gone, vanished without a trace. His phone went straight to voicemail, his social media accounts locked down, and his friends and family seemed just as clueless as she was. She had spent days poring over their past, going through old photos, messages, and memories. But everything felt different now. The shared jokes, the trips they had taken together, the moments when she had believed in their love so fully, it all felt like a lie. The more she looked, the more she questioned what was real and what had been an illusion. But something inside Maria refused to accept that it was over, that she would never have answers. She couldn't move on until she understood why Jared had done this. There had to be an explanation. She wasn't going to let this go. And so, she did what she had to do, she went to the one person who could possibly give her answers, his best friend, Ethan. Ethan had always been more than just Jared's best friend, he had been Maria's friend too. They had shared countless conversations over dinner, swapped stories about their childhoods, laughed about their mutual love for bad movies. When Jared had been around, Ethan was the steady, loyal presence. He had never seemed to mind that Maria and Jared had their own moments, he was content to sit back, enjoy their company, and remain the quiet observer. But since the wedding, Maria hadn't heard from Ethan either. The phone calls, the texts, all went unanswered. He had been just as unreachable as Jared. But Maria had to try. If Ethan knew anything, he might hold the key to understanding Jared's sudden disappearance. She dialed his number for what felt like the 100th time. The ringing echoed in her ear, but there was no answer. Just when she was about to hang up, the call connected. "Maria?" Ethan's voice was strained, almost as if he had been expecting her to call, but still surprised. "Is everything okay?" Maria took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be easy. She could already feel her chest tighten, the familiar emotions stirring up again, threatening to overtake her. But she pushed through. "No, Ethan. No, everything is not okay. I need to know what happened. I need to understand why Jared left me. Why he walked out on our wedding." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Ethan didn't speak for a few seconds, and when he finally did, his voice was heavy with something, guilt, maybe? Regret? "I'm not sure I'm the one to explain this to you, Maria. I really don't know what Jared was thinking." Maria's heart dropped. His words were like a slap to the face. "What do you mean? You're his best friend. You've known him for years. If anyone knows what's going on, it's you." Ethan's voice faltered, then he sighed, clearly conflicted. "I never wanted to be the one to tell you this. Jared, he's been changing for a while now. It wasn't just the wedding day. There were things happening before that, things I didn't know how to tell you." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "What kind of things? Why didn't you say anything to me?" I wasn't sure what to do, Maria. I didn't know how to help. But I'll tell you everything I know, because I owe it to you." Maria's pulse quickened as she braced herself for what she might hear. "Just tell me." Ethan took a deep breath, and for the first time, Maria could hear the weariness in his voice. A few months ago, Jared started acting different. Not in a big way, not at first. Just little things. He would go out for work meetings more often, stay out late, act distracted when we hung out. I didn't think too much of it at first, people change, you know. But then I started noticing other things. He wasn't the same guy he used to be. Maria clenched her fists, her mind racing. She had noticed it too. The distance between them, the late nights, the unexplained absences. She had tried to ignore it, to tell herself it was just stress or work pressure. But now, it all made sense. "Did you know about her?" Maria asked, her voice trembling as she spoke the words she had been afraid to say out loud. "Her?" Ethan's voice wavered. "Maria, The mistress," she said, her voice sharp now, the anger rising in her chest. "Did you know about the woman Jared was seeing behind my back?" There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Maria could feel Ethan's hesitation. She could hear the guilt in his silence. "I found out a couple of months ago," Ethan finally confessed. I didn't know how to tell you. But I didn't think he would go this far. I didn't think he would walk away from you. I thought maybe he was just going through a phase." "A phase?" Maria could hardly believe her ears. The words felt like a betrayal, like a sharp knife twisting deeper into her chest. "He was cheating on me, Ethan. He was lying to me. And you knew?" "I'm sorry. I should have told you, but," Ethan broke off, his voice barely audible. "You have to understand. Jared was going through something. I don't know exactly what, but he wasn't the man you thought he was anymore. And he definitely wasn't the man I thought he was." Maria's head was spinning. She was drowning in a sea of revelations she hadn't been prepared for. "What do you mean? What do you mean he wasn't the man I thought he was? Who is he?" Maria, I can't give you all the answers. But Jared's been hiding things from everyone. I think he's been dealing with something much bigger than any of us realized. Something that started long before he met her. Maria swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. But he left me. He left me on our wedding day. How do I move on from that? How do I ever trust anyone again? I don't know, Ethan admitted, his voice strained. I don't know what to say to make it better. But you need to know, you're not the one who failed here. He did. He's the one who walked away. Maria's throat tightened, and she forced herself to hold it together. She had expected answers, but now, all she felt was more confusion. More questions. What had Jared been hiding? What had been going on in his mind? And most importantly, what had this all been about? Ethan, I need to know what happened. I need you to tell me everything. I need you to tell me the truth. There was a long pause. Maria could hear Ethan sighing on the other end, as if he knew that telling her the truth would only make things worse. But he couldn't stop now. She needed to know. Jared, he wasn't just seeing her, Maria. He was involved in something much deeper. Something darker. I think he got mixed up with people who weren't good for him. People who changed him. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Changed him how? I don't know exactly, but I've seen the way he's been acting. He's become distant, reckless even. I think he got himself into something he couldn't get out of. Maria's mind was racing. What was Jared involved in? What had she missed? The pieces weren't adding up, but she was starting to get a glimpse of something bigger than what she had thought. This wasn't just about a man who had betrayed her. This was something more. Something dangerous. She wasn't going to let this go. Not now. Maria stood at the window, staring out at the city lights below. They seemed so distant, as if they belonged to a world she no longer understood. Her mind was a mess, a chaotic swirl of thoughts and emotions that she couldn't untangle. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into an abyss of uncertainty and despair. The conversation with Ethan had left her with more questions than answers. What had Jared gotten himself into? Who were the people that had changed him so drastically? And why hadn't anyone told her? Her own life had felt like a house of cards, and with each revelation, the foundation seemed to crumble beneath her. What had once seemed like a beautiful, secure future now felt like a mirage, an illusion that had dissolved into the cold, harsh reality of betrayal and secrets. It had been almost 3 weeks since the wedding. 3 weeks of sleepless nights, of crying herself to sleep, of endless days spent trying to make sense of the mess that her life had become. She had tried to move on, to pick up the pieces and rebuild, but it was impossible. Jared's absence was a constant, unrelenting weight on her chest. Everywhere she looked, there were reminders of him, the photos, the places they had visited, the little things they had shared. How could she move on when his ghost haunted every corner of her world? Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from Ethan. He had been texting her every few days since their conversation, but she hadn't been ready to respond. The truth he had revealed was still too raw, too painful to process. But now, something in his message caught her attention. Ethan, I know I didn't tell you everything, Maria. You need to come to my place. I'll explain everything. You need to know the truth. Maria's heart skipped a beat. Ethan had told her that Jared had been mixed up in something dangerous, something that had changed him. But what exactly was that danger? What had Jared gotten involved in? She couldn't wait any longer. She needed answers. She quickly grabbed her coat, the cold air of the evening hitting her as she stepped outside. The night felt suffocating, the city streets swallowed by darkness. It was like the world around her had changed, shifted in ways she couldn't comprehend. She hailed a cab, her mind racing, her heart pounding in her chest. When she arrived at Ethan's apartment, the door was already ajar, as if he had been expecting her. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The apartment was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that made her skin crawl. She followed the faint sound of footsteps down the hallway, and soon found herself standing in front of Ethan's door. He opened it before she had a chance to knock, his face grim, eyes filled with a kind of remorse that sent a chill down her spine. "Maria," he said softly. "Come in. We need to talk." Maria stepped inside, her stomach twisting with anxiety. Ethan led her to the living room, where the atmosphere was heavy, tense. There were no signs of life in the room, no pictures, no personal touches, just bare walls and empty furniture. It was like a reflection of the emptiness Maria felt inside. "Sit down," Ethan said, motioning to the couch. Maria obeyed, her body feeling numb as she sank into the cushions. Ethan paced in front of her, his hands rubbing his face in frustration. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle to find the right words. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "Maria, there's more you need to know. I didn't tell you everything because I didn't know how to say it. But now, I think it's time you heard the full story." Maria's heart raced. "What are you talking about, Ethan? What else is there to know? I need to understand why Jared left me. Why he did this. You said he was involved in something, what is it?" Ethan stopped pacing and sat down across from her, his eyes never leaving hers. For a moment, he didn't say anything, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Jared's not who you think he is, Maria," he began slowly. "He hasn't been the person you thought he was for a long time. The things he's been involved in, they're darker than you realize. I don't think he ever meant for it to go this far, but it did." Maria's breath caught in her throat. "What kind of things, Ethan? What do you mean?" Ethan looked away, his face etched with guilt. "Jared got involved with some people who, they're not just businessmen or high society types. They're dangerous, Maria. They have connections, power. And they've been manipulating him for months, using him for their own purposes." Maria's mind spun. She couldn't comprehend what Ethan was saying. Jared, her Jared, was involved in something criminal? Something dangerous? It didn't make sense. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Maria asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you keep this from me?" "I wanted to protect you," Ethan said quietly. "I didn't think you needed to know. But now that Jared's gone, I think you deserve the truth. He didn't just leave you for her, Maria. There's more to it. I think he was trying to protect you from the mess he got himself into." Maria's mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of information that Ethan was revealing. But nothing was adding up. If he was trying to protect me, why would he leave me? Why wouldn't he just tell me what was going on? Ethan sighed, looking as if he had just given up on trying to understand Jared's actions. "I think Jared was scared. He didn't know how to handle it anymore. He got in too deep, and I don't think he knew who to trust. So he pushed you away, thinking it was the only way to keep you safe." Maria's chest tightened. "Safe from what, Ethan? What was he protecting me from?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his expression clouded with uncertainty. "Maria, I don't know all the details. But I do know that Jared was involved in something illegal. Something that could ruin him, and anyone connected to him. He was trying to distance himself from you, trying to keep you out of it, even if it meant hurting you." The words hit Maria like a punch to the gut. Illegal? What had Jared gotten into? The man she had loved, the man she had trusted, was involved in criminal activities? She couldn't wrap her mind around it. This wasn't the man she had known. It couldn't be. "So, what happens now?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where is he?" What's going to happen to him? Ethan hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously toward the window. I don't know, Maria. But I think he's in danger. The people he's been dealing with, they don't just let you walk away. I think Jared left because he knew something was coming. Something bad. And he wanted to protect you from it. Maria felt a wave of nausea wash over her. She had never imagined that Jared's life had been anything other than the one he had shown her. They had been happy, or so she thought. She had believed in him, trusted him with everything. And now, she was standing in the ruins of that trust, looking at a man she hardly recognized in the mirror of the past few weeks. Do you know where he is? Maria asked, her voice trembling. Ethan shook his head. No. I don't. But I think he's out of town. I've been trying to track him down, but he's been off the grid. Completely unreachable. Maria's mind was reeling. There were so many pieces to the puzzle, but none of them seemed to fit together. And what about the mistress? Where did she fit into all of this? Had she been part of Jared's plan? Or had she been another pawn in whatever dangerous game Jared had gotten involved in? Ethan, I need you to help me find him, Maria said, her voice shaking with determination. I need to talk to him. I need to hear it from him. I need to know why he did this. I need answers. Ethan looked at her with a sad, resigned expression. I don't think you're going to get the answers you're looking for, Maria. I don't think Jared knows what's going on anymore. But if you want to try, I'll help you. Maria's mind raced as she sat in Ethan's dimly lit apartment. The weight of the revelations from their conversation still pressed heavily on her chest. Jared was involved in something dark, something illegal, something far worse than she could have imagined. Ethan had tried to explain it all, but nothing seemed to make sense. He was right, the more she learned, the less she understood. And yet, despite all the confusion, there was one thing Maria knew for certain. She had to find Jared. She had to get the truth from him, even if it meant diving into the heart of a mystery she wasn't ready to face. It had been hours since she left Ethan's apartment, but she hadn't gotten any closer to the answers she needed. The world outside felt cold and indifferent, like a vast maze where she was constantly being pushed further away from the truth. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her back to the present. She pulled it out and saw a message from Ethan. Ethan, I've been looking into things. I think I know where Jared might be. But Maria, this is getting dangerous. Be careful. She felt her pulse quicken. It was a lead. Finally, something that could bring her closer to finding Jared, to uncovering the truth. But Ethan's warning lingered in the back of her mind. Dangerous. What had Jared gotten himself into? And why had Ethan seemed so resigned? The unease in his voice was unmistakable. Maria took a deep breath and sent a reply. Maria, where is he? Seconds ticked by like hours as she waited for Ethan's response. Finally, her phone buzzed again. Ethan, there's a cabin. It's off the grid. Far out in the woods. I know it sounds crazy, but I think he's hiding there. I don't know if he's alone. I don't know if it's safe. But I think it's our only shot. Maria's stomach churned as she read the message. A cabin in the woods? It sounded like the kind of place where secrets were buried, where people went to escape from the world, or worse, to do things they didn't want anyone to know about. But it was a lead, and it was the only one she had. She couldn't turn back now. She quickly packed a bag, grabbed her keys, and headed for the door. The night outside was cold, the streets eerily quiet as she drove through the city. The further she went, the more isolated it became. Soon, the familiar urban sprawl gave way to dark, winding roads. Maria's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating trees that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. As she drove, her thoughts began to race again. Was she making a mistake? Was it worth risking everything to confront Jared? She had loved him, she had believed in him. But now, all that was left was a hollow ache, and the truth that she couldn't ignore. He had betrayed her. He had chosen to walk away from everything they had, and now he was hiding from her. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger was at play. There was more to the story than a broken engagement. Something had driven him to this point, and she wasn't going to stop until she understood what that something was. After what felt like an eternity, Maria finally reached the cabin. It was a small, rustic structure, barely visible from the road. The moonlight reflected off the windows, casting long shadows across the ground. Maria's heart raced as she pulled her car into the gravel driveway. She parked and sat there for a moment, staring at the cabin, wondering if Jared was inside. Was he waiting for her? Or was he long gone, lost in the chaos of his own life? The wind rustled the trees, a sound that seemed almost otherworldly in the stillness of the night. Maria took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Her feet crunched against the gravel as she approached the front door. Her hand hovered over the knob for a moment before she steeled herself and turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, empty hallway. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of old wood. It felt like no one had lived here for years. Maria stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She called out, but there was no answer. The only sound was the soft hum of the wind outside. She walked cautiously through the cabin, her senses on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the corner, made her jump. She checked each room, but they were all empty. The cabin seemed abandoned, as though Jared had left in a hurry. There were no signs of him, no clues to where he might have gone next. Maria felt a pang of frustration. Where was he? Why had he come here? She was about to leave when she noticed something out of the corner of her eye. A small, weathered envelope lay on the kitchen counter, as if it had been left there recently. Maria's pulse quickened as she picked it up, her hands trembling. She turned the envelope over, her name scrawled across the front in Jared's familiar handwriting. Maria. If you're reading this, it means you found me. I don't have much time left, and I need you to understand something. This is bigger than you and me. There are things I've done that I can never undo. People I've hurt, people who won't let me go. You need to get out of here, Maria. It's not safe. Please. I wish things had been different, but you have to believe me when I say I never wanted to hurt you. I love you. Jared. The words on the page sent a cold shiver down Maria's spine. Jared's love for her. The same love he had abandoned at the altar. She couldn't reconcile the man in the letter with the man who had walked away without a second thought. His words were filled with regret, but they felt empty, like a lifeline thrown too late. As Maria stood there, holding the letter, a noise came from upstairs. She froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the house settling. It was footsteps. She didn't have time to think. She shoved the letter into her bag and quietly crept toward the staircase. Her heart pounded in her chest as she ascended, each step heavier than the last. At the top of the stairs, she could hear muffled voices. One of them sounded like Jared. Her stomach twisted as she approached the door to the bedroom. She had to know what was going on. She had to understand what was happening to him. She pushed the door open just a crack, peering inside. What she saw made her stomach churn. Jared was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head buried in his hands. He looked like a man broken, someone who had lost everything. But it wasn't just him. Across from him sat a woman, someone Maria didn't recognize. She was tall, with dark hair, her face partially obscured by shadows. The woman was speaking softly, but Maria could barely make out the words. "You need to leave, Jared," the woman said. "It's too late for you. You've already made your choice." Maria's heart skipped a beat. Too late for you? What did that mean? What had Jared gotten himself involved in? Jared's voice cracked as he spoke. I don't have a choice anymore. I can't undo what I've done. The woman's voice softened. I know you didn't mean for it to go this far. But the people you're dealing with, they don't forgive. You've seen what they're capable of. Jared's voice was barely a whisper now. I don't know how to fix this. Maria's breath caught in her throat. It was as if the world around her had stopped moving. She had expected answers, but the truth that was slowly unraveling before her was far darker and more complicated than she could have ever imagined. Jared wasn't just running from a mistake, he was running from something much larger, something that threatened not only his life but hers as well. Without thinking, Maria stepped back, the floorboards creaking under her weight. But it was too late. The door slammed open, and there stood Jared, his eyes wide with shock and something else, something Maria couldn't quite place. Fear, maybe. Maria, he whispered, his voice hoarse. For a moment, time stood still. The last time Maria had seen him, he had been the man she was going to marry. The man who had promised her everything. But the man in front of her now, he was a stranger. His eyes were haunted, his face gaunt. And in that moment, Maria realized the truth. Jared had been hiding more than just his feelings. He had been hiding his entire life. Jared, Maria whispered, her voice cracking. What have you done? The room was suffocating. Maria stood frozen in the doorway, staring at Jared. He looked like a man haunted by his past, lost in a world that had swallowed him whole. The man she had known, the man she had trusted, was no longer there. His eyes were hollow, his face drawn and weary. He had the appearance of someone who had been running for too long, someone who had been hiding from something he could no longer outrun. Jared, Maria whispered, her voice trembling. Her heart pounded in her chest, torn between disbelief and overwhelming grief. What happened to you? What have you done? Jared took a slow, unsteady step toward her. His eyes were wide, but there was no recognition in them. It was as if he was seeing her for the first time in a long while, a stranger in his life, someone who no longer fit into the shattered world he had created. I never wanted you to find out, he said hoarsely, his voice cracking. I never wanted to drag you into this. But, it's too late now. Maria felt a chill run through her as she stepped back, her mind reeling with the weight of his words. Too late? What was too late? The truth was beginning to form in her mind, but it was a truth she was not ready to face. She had come here for answers, to confront him, but now she was standing at the edge of something much darker. What's too late, Jared? Maria's voice shook with emotion. What are you involved in? What are you hiding? Jared's expression faltered, his lips trembling as if he were trying to form the right words. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to bring you into this mess. But the people I'm involved with, they're dangerous. They're dangerous, Maria. And I can't protect you from them anymore. I tried. I tried to keep you safe. Maria's heart was racing. Who are these people? What are you talking about? Jared, you have to tell me. I deserve to know the truth. I need to know what's going on. He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. The raw emotion on his face almost broke her. It was as if he was holding on to something too heavy for him to carry alone. She had seen him like this before, vulnerable, afraid, but this time, it was different. There was an edge to his fear, something far darker than she had ever imagined. I'm sorry, Maria, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I never meant for you to get caught up in this. But it's not just me anymore. It's too big. They know where you are. They know you're here. And they'll come for you. Maria's breath caught in her throat. They know where I am. Her mind raced. The moment she had stepped into this cabin, she had known it wasn't just about finding Jared, it was about surviving the dangerous world he had been drawn into. But now, the stakes were higher than she ever could have imagined. There were people out there looking for her, people who would stop at nothing to make sure their secrets stayed buried. "Who are they, Jared?" Maria asked, her voice steady despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. "Tell me who they are. I need to know everything." Jared's face twisted with pain. He took a step back, as if trying to distance himself from her. "I can't protect you from them, Maria. I can't keep you safe anymore. You should have stayed away. I should have kept you away from all of this." Maria's chest tightened. "What happened to you? How did it come to this?" Jared finally looked at her, his eyes full of regret. "I got involved with people I shouldn't have. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could fix everything. But the deeper I got, the harder it became to get out. And then, they came to me. They offered me a way out. They said if I did what they wanted, they'd let me go. They promised me they'd leave you out of it." "Leave me out of it?" Maria echoed, her voice rising in disbelief. "Jared, you never thought to tell me? You never thought that maybe I could help?" "I didn't want to put you in danger," he snapped, his tone sharp. "I was trying to protect you. I thought I could handle it on my own. But I couldn't. And now, it's too late. They've found us. They know we're here." The room seemed to close in around them. Maria's thoughts were spinning. She couldn't understand what Jared was saying, couldn't wrap her mind around the truth he was revealing. He had been involved with dangerous people. And now, they were coming for her. "Who are they, Jared?" she repeated, her voice trembling. "Tell me what they want." Jared didn't answer right away. He stood there, staring at her, as if weighing whether or not he should continue. Finally, his voice came, low and filled with a kind of resigned defeat. "They're not just criminals, Maria," he said. "They're a group of people who have power. Connections. They control everything, businesses, governments, even law enforcement. They've been using me for months, pulling the strings, making me do things I didn't want to do. And now they want something from me. They want something I can't give them." Maria's head was spinning. A shadowy group, controlling everything. It sounded like a conspiracy theory, something out of a movie. But Jared's face was pale, his eyes filled with fear. He wasn't lying. She could see that. "They want me to take the fall for something," he continued, his voice breaking. "They're framing me, Maria. They've planted evidence, made it look like I'm guilty of something I didn't do. And if I don't play along, they'll come after you. They'll hurt you." The truth slammed into her like a tidal wave. It wasn't just a broken engagement, it wasn't just about his leaving her at the altar. Jared had been part of something far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. The lies, the manipulation, the secrets, none of it had been about her. It had all been about survival. And now, they were both caught in the web of something far bigger than either of them. Jared stepped toward her, his hands shaking. "Maria, please. You have to leave. You have to get out of here, now. You don't understand what they're capable of. They won't stop until they have what they want." Maria looked into his eyes. She saw the desperation, the fear, the regret. But most of all, she saw the truth, the broken man standing before her, the man who had loved her and who had now fallen so far into darkness that he didn't know how to find his way back. "I can't leave you, Jared," Maria said, her voice firm. "I can't just walk away from you. Not now. We'll figure this out together. We'll find a way out." Jared shook his head, his face filled with anguish. "You don't understand, Maria. There is no way out. It's too late for me. But it's not too late for you. Please. For the sake of everything we were, just go." Maria's heart shattered. She didn't want to leave him. She didn't want to lose the man she had once known, the man she had loved. But the reality was clear. The people Jared had become involved with, this dangerous group, would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. They would hurt her to make him comply. She felt a sudden surge of anger. Not at Jared, but at the world that had brought them to this point. She had trusted him. She had believed in their love, in the life they were supposed to build together. But it had all been a lie, a facade created by forces beyond their control. Jared, Maria said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her, we can't do this alone. I won't leave you to face this on your own. But I need your help. We need to fight this. Together. Jared's eyes softened, but the fear remained. I don't think we can fight this, Maria. I don't think there's any way out. Maria took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. But she wasn't ready to give up, not yet. She didn't know how they would get out of this, but she couldn't let fear dictate their fate. We'll find a way, she said, her voice filled with resolve. We will.